Okay, in this lab we're going to learn to use LibreOffice, which is a free alternative to Microsoft Office. And just as Microsoft Office has a couple of different applications that interoperate, so there's Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, and so on. LibreOffice has parallel applications. So instead of Microsoft Word, there's LibreOffice Writer or LibreWriter. There's LibreCalc instead of Excel, and so on. And so we're going to use the LibreOffice suite of applications in order to put together just a simple report. So the actual content of the report isn't important, but what is important is to get some practice using all of the tools. And so we're going to create a spreadsheet in LibreCalc and put some data in it, and we're going to use it to generate a graph. And then we're going to put together a report in LibreWriter that is structured correctly as a report, and then we're going to paste our graph into the report. And then we're going to go ahead and save it as a Microsoft Word document so that we can give it to a professor who doesn't necessarily have LibreOffice installed. And then let's look at doing a PowerPoint as well with just a slide or two, including the graph and some bullet points. Okay, so first thing I want to do is find some data for my report. And so I'm going to go to Firefox and let's go ahead and search for Linux usage statistics. And I happen to know that most of the good data that you can get is commercial, and they want to charge you for it because actually companies invest a lot of money supporting different platforms, and usage statistics for platforms are expensive to gather and also high value. So bottom line is it's hard to locate free statistics. But for our purposes, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I can just get some reasonable looking data and manually enter it. So I'm going to start with this Linux statistics 2023 from TrueList. And I'm just going to thumb down. So here's primary operating systems among professional developers. And if you'll notice, this doesn't actually add up to 100% because I guess most developers have more than one primary operating system. So this might not be the best data set for our purposes. Maybe we could use it. And then let's see. So this is interesting. So this is the percentage of websites that are powered by Linux. And we see that overall, for all websites, only 39.2% are powered by Linux, which is still comparatively high. But as you look at the more popular, more heavily trafficked websites, you see it levels off about 49%. So about half of the most popular websites on the internet are powered by Linux. In terms of developers, you see 61% list Windows as the primary operating system, 47% use Linux or Unix. So once again, Linux has a lot of penetration for developers. And then I'm just looking for data that has multiple values. So here's a good one. So leading desktop operating systems worldwide by market share. So this does look like it adds up to 100%. And it shows that in terms of desktop operating systems, Windows is by far the dominant operating system. So 73.72% Windows, 15.33% Mac, and only 2% Linux on the desktop. So even though Linux is popular with developers and it's popular for web servers and other kinds of client server applications, it doesn't have sort of the mass market appeal that Windows and Mac OS have. And then let's see. So server market share by operating system. So these are similar. Windows percentage is similar, but you'll notice instead of 2% Linux, this is up to 13.6%. And then OS X, Macintosh operating system, isn't even on the list. So somewhere in the 6.5% is Mac OS. So server Linux is more popular for servers than it is for desktops, and it's most popular for web servers. And then I looked at this page already, and so here's another one that I would want to do. So this is the one I'm going to do. I want you to do a different graph than I'm doing, but you're going to follow the same basic process. So I'm going to make a graph that's based on this data. So this is top Linux subcategories by market share, basically the popularity of different distros. And we see that Ubuntu is currently the most popular distro with about 34%. Debian's number 2 is 16, and that's what I'm running here. CentOS is 9.3%, and then dribs and drabs after that. Now, I've used Red Hat for a long time, but Red Hat's only 0.8%, which is relatively small share. I used Slackware for a long time. Slackware isn't even on this list, except maybe unknown. I have a friend who uses Mint. Mint isn't on here. So lots and lots of different Linux distributions, but most of the domination is either Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, or unknown. So I'm going to do a simplified version of this because I don't need all these little ones down here. And then and let me just unfull page that and get the data that I actually want on the screen. Okay, so that I can just basically type it in manually. And then I'm going to start with LibreOffice Calc. So we're going to go to Activities, and there's a couple of ways of opening this. You can either go to all of your apps, and somewhere under the L's, you'll see LibreOffice Calc, and that's where I want to start. Or you can also go to a software applet if you have one of those. Look for installed. You should have it installed already by default. So LibreOffice Calc, just go ahead and open it. And it will take you to a brand new workbook with a new worksheet. So if you've ever used Excel before, LibreOffice is really similar, and it will feel comfortable and not very intimidating. But if you've never used Excel or LibreOffice Calc, it seems pretty scary when you're starting out because there's all of these menus and tools and buttons and icons, and it's a lot. But most of what you need to be productive is like 1 or 2 clicks away, and you really don't need to know that much to be able to do simple stuff like what we're going to do today. So good results, but not a lot of stuff that you need to know. So let's go ahead and I'm going to get rid of this thing here. And so now I have my sheet. And I have my data, and I'm going to start entering it. So the way I want to structure this to create a graph is I'm basically going to have 2 columns. So in this column, I'm going to have my actual usage data. And then for each row, there's going to be a separate data point. And in this column, column A, I'm going to make a label. So the label is going to be the name of the distro. And then I'll do one more. Gen2. And then everything else, I'm going to put in other, and then unknown at the bottom. Okay, so let's do 33.9% and 16% and 9.3% and 0.8, 0.5, and then I'm going to skip other. And then unknown is going to be 39.1%. Okay, so now for other, I need to basically take 100% and subtract off all of these other values. And I could do that manually using a calculator or even add them in my head, but it's kind of a pain. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make a formula. And in Excel and in LibreOffice Calc, what you can do is for any particular cell, you can type an equal sign and then a mathematical expression that can make calculations based on values in other cells. And then whatever the result of this calculation is, that's what's going to get stored in this cell. And if you change any of the cells that the calculation is based on, this value gets automatically updated. So it's super convenient. So what I want for other is basically the sum of all of these other boxes, 100% minus that. So we'll do 100% minus, and then I want to group. So this cell here, this is column B, row 2. So that's B2 is going to be 33.9. And then I'm going to add B3, B4, B5, B6, and B8. So this other here is 0.4%. Is that right? Let's see. 33, 43, 59, 60, 99.1. Yeah. And if I wanted to verify that, I could also do this. I could say equals sum, and then you can give it a range by saying B2 colon B8. So that's going to add all of the values from here to here, and it adds up to 100%. So it looks like this is working. And then that's all I have to do to create my data. So let's go ahead and select the data. And then under the Insert menu, there's going to be Chart. So I want to make a new chart here. And then I get to choose what kind of chart I want. For something like this, where you have different categories of data, like so each of these different distros is a different category, and you have one number associated with the category, either a bar chart or a column chart, the only difference is whether they're horizontal or vertical, makes sense because you have a different, so like this bar would be Ubuntu, and this one would be Debian, and this one would be CentOS. So that's a reasonable presentation. Or a pie chart, that's reasonable as well. And then here's a pie chart, here's a donut chart. Either of those is fine. Something like area, line, XY, these are better with trends over time. So if I wanted to show the change in usage for the different distributions over time, a line chart would be good for that. So you would start like 1980, 1990 or so, and then each year after that, you could track the popularity of each distribution. And a line chart would make sense with that. But for this kind of data, it doesn't make sense to use a line chart. And then some more slightly specific and slightly obscure ones. So for this one, though, since I've restricted it to a fairly small number of categories, I'm going to go ahead and use a donut chart. And I like the exploded donut chart. So let me go ahead and do that. There's some additional options. It's checking, make sure that it understands my selection of data. And important thing is, so the data series is in columns. Basically, popularity is all in one column. First row as label, and first column is label. So the first row, that's the one that said usage over the column. And then first column is label. That's the one that said, Ubuntu, Debian, and so on. So this is right. And then if I want to attach any other fiddly things, I can change color. I think I'm okay with the defaults. And then chart elements, let me go ahead and do a title. So popularity of different Linux distributions. And I don't need a subtitle. So I want the legend, and I guess right side is fine. And then display grid is fine. So finish. And here's my chart. So I kind of like that. That looks fine for me. I'm going to go ahead and now uh, some people find it annoying that this chart is on the same page as the data and is difficult to see. And if you want, what you can do is create a new sheet, and then you can select the chart and Control X to cut it, and then go to the other one and paste it in. So now you have the data over here and the chart over here. Um, but you have to keep in mind that if you update the data here, if you change this to like, let's make this 60, and then go back here, it doesn't actually, oh, did it? I don't know. Actually, did it? Let's see. So I don't think it did. Yeah, let me update that. Yeah, no, actually it does. Okay, so it does update the chart when you change that. So let me change Debian to 80 here. And then now we look at Debian, and Debian is this big thing. So yeah, okay, so it is updating it even though it's on a different sheet. All right, so I have the data over here. I have the chart over here. You can right click on the tab and rename it. So this is going to be distro usage data. And then this is going to be distro usage chart. Okay, so now that I have my graph, let's go ahead and make a report.